I just talked to a guy that's at the border in Yuma, and he's been there for a week and a half, and he was showing me video. He says some of the tactics that they're using at the border to infiltrate our border with drugs and people are stuff that they learned in the military. I mean, that's what's going on in these different areas. And they go out, they'll bring a woman with them, they'll bring a kid with them, they'll leave those kids, and then the Border Patrol goes and grabs the kid and the woman. They say, what's the big threat? The threat is now the Border Patrol goes to grab the woman and the guys get in. And he's showing me footage of this. And that's just in Yuma. And then you know what's going on in Texas. Been down to McAllen. This is a huge problem. And anyone who goes down there and talks to Border Patrol will leave saying this is a crisis.
The only issue becomes it's going to take some time now because they're going to sue his pants off. I mean, hopefully he wins in the Supreme Court down the road. Now, I'm assuming he's going to win in 2020 because so far the clown list of the 8 folks that the left is running against him is really embarrassing. Now, Biden hops in. That's a different story. I think you'd even admit that. But if he doesn't win in 2020, or even if he does, now this is really going to take some time before he can fulfill his promise, which he campaigned on a couple of years ago.
I don't think it's a problem, and here's why. They are building, believe it or not, they're just spending now, and you know this, Sid, for 2017 because of the contracts and different things.
Right.
It's not a bureaucracy. Anyone who's built a house knows what that's like, or had to take over a house and want to build a pool or add a dormer. So can you imagine doing that at the border? So some people are resistant. So they're going to start doing that. So he's going to get 50 miles. You ever drive 50 miles on a fence? That could go a long way. That's a pretty good ad.
Yes.
And then you talk about the delay, and he's going to say, finish the fence, finish the wall. And all I could say is to everybody listening right now, many of which didn't vote for Trump, just know this. This isn't a game to him. He believes in his core that it is an emergency, and he believes that a wall is not foolproof, but it is definitely a huge help towards that answer. So that's just it. I mean, he's as determined to do that as anything. If he was looking for a tax cut or infrastructure, I'd say, well, that's a political thing, and let's see if he gets it. With the wall, he feels that in his core.
I got to read this to you, then we'll get to the sports. Nigerians and fake nooses, MAGA hats and a crafty beaver, cow farts and trains to Hawaii, a lying senator saying she's a Cherokee, a heels-up senator sleeping her way to the bottom, Congresswoman married her own brother, governor in a KKK robe. Democrats, gotta love them. That was a tweet that was sent out this morning from one of my favorite actors, James Woods. This whole Smollett thing with Robin Roberts here locally on Channel 7, Brian Kilmeade in tears, and oh my God, MAGA, what they did to him. So when Joe Biden goes out yesterday and says America is an embarrassment, I think he's right. But I think his problem is he's on the side that's been the big embarrassment. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, John McCain ripped the president last year at that event over in Munich, and for Biden to feel compelled to say that publicly, I thought he'd be smarter than that. You know, I would assume that he understands that all these national security people are in attendance, and they're just looking for a reason to rip America on our best day. And now people are saying, look what they're saying. Joe Biden, we all know him for 50 years. He's only had one job. And look he says he's embarrassed. That's another reason to diminish America. So I thought it was stupid. The other thing to keep in mind is on that Empire Star.
Smollett.
Do you realize how close that could be to a race riot? You take a black guy, gets attacked by two white people saying this is MAGA country, and then beats him and puts a noose around his neck.
Yep.
I mean, there's cities that have been torn apart by things like this.
Oh, yeah. And Good Morning America doing their best. Cowardly face forward said today that they really didn't want to interview him. That was not Robin Roberts' idea, that he pushed himself on them. That's GMA pulling away from that, which was an embarrassment. And when I watched it a couple of days ago, I knew the guy was lying. Anyway, Brian Kilmeade, every day, Fox and Friends, 6 to 9, and then 9 to 12, including this station, his own radio show, which is great. Hey, let me ask you about some sports stuff. This new football league, the Alliance of American Football, it was really started for one reason and one reason only, Brian, and that's gambling. I heard you a couple of weeks ago on your show talking about gambling. In fact, I texted you one day about some of the wins and losses.
Yeah.
What do you think about this league, literally, Brian Kilmeade, built on gambling?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I do think they're there to with Bill Polian involved to develop players. I do think that there's a huge need, and if I'm just an investor and I like sports, let's say like Sid, I'm saying, wow, there's an opening in the market, and it would be AAA football. Because either you make the big time or you're done with the game entirely. It's not even the CFL isn't even a legitimate opportunity these days. They got their own players and they don't pay enough. So I think this is an opportunity to see that third string quarterback on your roster. However, they're trying to add technology, so you're betting on plays, which something that Merrill Hodge's league had started 2 years ago. And I think that it's an idea, but I think mostly in the ideal stage with Charlie Ebersol, I think they want to develop players. And I think they want to be a viable asset. And I think it's almost going to be like soccer 5-10 years from now. Hey, that quarterback that looks so good for the Tampa franchise or whatever San Antonio franchise, well, you know what? I'm going to make an offer. And then San Antonio gets paid along with the player. So I see that happening. I have to be full disclosure. My son is working for the XFL, and it comes out next year.
Oh, awesome.
And their model is extremely impressive.
Yeah.
So look out. They're doing it slow. They got a billionaire backing them. There's one investor. I would look out for, who, are these checks clearing with the alliance?
Yeah, on a much larger scale, one of the things that you do every week, and one with Stu Varney, we love Stu Varney, and you're great with him, and he will talk an awful lot about gambling. And in fact, I made an appearance on Newsmax Live from the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago, because it is a big deal right now. 6 or 8 states have it. New York seems like maybe less than a year we'll have it here too. I know what side of the fence you're on with it, but at least tell my listening audience, legal gambling in New York, you want it, right?
I understand the positives on it. Like people say the lottery, that brings revenue in. I just think this. Any competitive person, especially when you're done with sports, or let's say you're in a job that doesn't really allow you to reach your potential, they go, let me go compete and put something on the line as money. It's the most natural thing to do for the American mindset, and I worry it's too easy to get addicted to it. I like the fact that you have to go to do it, and I understand the libertarian aspect, and I understand it's a land of the free. You can make your own decisions, but when you make pot so available and you're going to make gambling so easy to somebody looking for something else in their lives, I just think we're going to have to open up more and more rehab centers. That's what it's going to lead to. Short-term revenue, long-term problems.
That's fair. And take it from me, I know all too well. Brian Kilmeade, hey, let's talk baseball here for a second. I know you're a big baseball fan, and Here we are. Mets and Yankees both opened camp last week down in South Florida, and yet Bryce Harper and Manny Machado still looking for work. I don't think either one ends up on any team here in New York City. But I know J.D. Martinez signed very, very late with the Red Sox last year and had an unbelievable season. But you usually don't see players of this caliber looking for work when spring training has already started. What are your thoughts on that?
How about never? The two of the top 5 players in the game can't get a deal. And know what they're doing? It's not collusion. They're looking at analytics. And your audience knows this upside. And they're saying, what pays off for us financially with these penalties when you go over the cap? Is it worth it? And number 2 is, are we better off with two or three players in that slot of 24-year-olds as opposed to a 28-year-old who wants a 10-year deal? And we all know at 36 and 37, 38, they're going to be a fraction of what they are. We're going to be paying some other team to take them off our hands. Hence, except for the crazy A-Rod deal.
Right.
I mean, we see this over and over again, but we're seeing it in front of our eyes. This thing is heading towards a strike. And it might even, and you saw, I think Wainwright said this week, it might even be during the season.
Yep.
That's how upset people are. Mm-hmm. But you have to understand, it's not collusion. It's financial sanity. People don't want to get buried in debt. They want to do it the right way. And I just think there's only one team spending sick amount of money, and that's the Dodgers, and they compete. And other teams aren't, and they are. So I think that Brian Cashman, who, listen, I think his strings have been tightened, but he also is being very responsible.
Yep. He's
like, you got to show me you could win before I pay for new players on August 1st. I would not be surprised if Machado comes back to the Yankees. I cannot see him spending 10 years with the White Sox. I think that's the next best deal. And, I think we're seeing a reestablishment of a sane budget. And that's just it. And I just think 10-year, look at Robinson Cano. Without a DH, this is a bad deal for the Mets. I mean, does anyone think that Seattle had a good move signing him to a 10-year deal? Why do you think he's back in New York?
Well, I think he's got 2 good years left, though, so I'm excited about him, to be honest. Yeah. Last one, I was upset the other day, Brian, when President Trump started going down the roster of your teammates, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. Didn't mention you guys. As far as I know, he's on with you guys more than anybody else. And certainly during the whole kneeling controversy, Brian, because you're a sports guy as well, he spent a lot of time with you on Fox and Friends talking about the issue with the National Football League. I've heard your commentary before. I know you've heard mine, especially the beginning of this show today. But let's get it here right now. Colin Kaepernick, a winner. I think the NFL wins, too, because now he's got to shut up. What were your thoughts after the CBA, not the court, but the collective bargaining agreement decision with Colin Kaepernick?
A couple of things. If Michael Freeman's story is correct and he got $60 million,
yeah.
I mean, isn't the NFL saying they're guilty? But yet they couldn't possibly be guilty.
That's a drop in the bucket for the NFL to make this guy shut up, sign a disclosure agreement, and just, I'm not going to say go away. He may even play this year, but $60 million to the NFL, Brian, that's a candy bar for you.
But it's not in life. And you just don't pay $60 million if you're innocent. And to make it go away, they have to understand the perception there.
True.
Now it looks like 32 teams had a problem, got together and said, don't sign this guy. We know that's not the case.
Right.
I believe O.J. Simpson, if he was 29 years old, when he was exonerated wrongly for killing his wife, I believe he would have been in the NFL because he could have helped the team win.
Well, we just saw this. Look, Ray Rice and Kareem Hunt basically did the same thing, but Ray Rice's body was finished, and Kareem Hunt is a terrific second-year player.
They're willing to wait a year. They're willing to wait a whole year for him to come. They just signed him. So what I'm trying to say is there's no way they colluded. They just said he's not worth it, just the same way they thought Tebow, solid backup, but we don't need the distraction. Doug Flutie, so dynamic, but I don't want them chanting my backup quarterback's name every time my starter throws an incompletion. So they just didn't want it. They don't want a guy walking in their locker room telling everybody what a bad country America is and how racially unjust this locker room is. They don't need it. Yeah. So they just said it's not worth it. And I got news for you. Look at his body. He was not the same guy. I don't know. If you look at him go to the Super Bowl and you look at the guy 2 years later, he's like a thin guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he was doing or what he wasn't doing, but he lost the job, and he's good enough to be somebody's backup, but not for that headache. And he's had offers to come in and work his way up. He wants huge money. I don't think the guy wants to play again, even though Geragos, his lawyer, says he absolutely does, and look for him to possibly go to the Patriots.
Or the Panthers. Cam Newton is out for the season, and Eric Reed, who was part of the lawsuit with Kaepernick and won the money, he just signed a 3-year deal with Carolina this week. So I think Geragos is right. I think he does end up in Carolina with the Panthers, but we'll see. At any rate, between Fox and Friends and your radio show every day, Brian, you're a breath of fresh air. You're great. We love having you on after me and Bernie here at this station every single morning, and a tremendous job on your very first appearance on Sid Sports Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And guys, I have 164 stations, but this is the best morning show that I follow up with.
Wow.
So we're
Thank
thrilled
you.
with the momentum that you guys allow us to be on. And growing up in New York, being on WABC has been a goal, and to be on with you Sunday has been great, and to be on Monday through Friday has been fantastic. Thanks so much, Sid.
All right, Brian, we love you. Thank you. Brian Kilmeade, make sure you watch and listen every single day. You heard it right there. There's nothing Brian Kilmeade can't talk about. Really, really smart kid. We'll open the phones before Steve Lavin, Ron Darling, Danny B., Curtis Sliwa. All that stuff still to come. 1-800-848-WABC. 1-800-848-9222. NBA, college basketball, Jacob DeGrom, Colin Kaepernick. Whatever's on your mind. We talk to you right after these words.
This is Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda.
Gotta love it, baby.
77 WABC. Spectacular guests, spectacular picks, spectacular sports, spectacular stories. Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda.
Spectacular.
77 WABC.
Spectacular.
I'm going to make a bold prediction that one of 3 teams picks him up. I mean,
Which 3 teams do you think will pick him up?
I think the natural would be if Cam Newton is out, then the natural place to be is to play with Eric in Carolina. I mean, can you imagine?
So he wants to play in the NFL again.
He absolutely wants to play. He wants to compete at the highest level. I mean, this is a competitive young man. Sometimes, I told you before we got on the air, sometimes it's hard for me to remember. I have to kind of dial myself back. He's only 31 years old. This is not somebody who's over the hill. This is someone who's in his prime. You get smarter at that position, and he's wise beyond his years.
There he is once again, courtesy of CNN, my friend Ana Cabrera. That's attorney Mark Geragos. His two clients win, and the reports are, Freeman, you heard Kilmeade say it, somewhere between 50, 60, 70, maybe upwards of $80 million for Kaepernick and Reed. Reed already, Eric Reed, who was Kaepernick's teammate in San Francisco years ago, already signed a 3-year deal this week with the Carolina Panthers. And with Cam Newton out, that may be the next destination for Kaepernick. During that conversation, Geragos also brought up the New England Patriots, backing up Tom Brady as a possible destination for Kaepernick. But, we'll see, right? A lot on the table. Next hour, once again, Steve Lavin. If you didn't see a lot of the college basketball yesterday, Duke beat NC State by 16 points. Think about this for a second. Zion Williamson, who all of us Knicks fans would love to get next year, led the way with 32. That 1-2 punch of Williamson and Barrett scored nearly 60 points combined for the Blue Devils in the win last night. With Williamson off the court, NC State outscored Duke by 9, and Duke still won by 16. Tells you the difference that Zion Williamson makes when he's on the court. Tennessee, number 1 team in the country, they go to Kentucky, and John Calipari and the boys kick the Vols' ass. Wasn't even close. Here's Calipari on the huge Kentucky win.
We gave them a chance where we had them down big, and all of a sudden you turn around, it's 15, 16, 12, and I could see them making shots and beating us. And that's why I was going crazy on some guys, because they're looking at me like, why are you going nuts? We're still up 12. We're up 24. Like, what? But they're young kids, and they don't seem to get that. But, but it was good.
Now, here's Rick Barnes, who, of course, coached Kevin Durant at Texas. Now he's at Tennessee, which, again, entered yesterday's action at number 1 on his team getting their asses kicked by Calipari in Kentucky.
It really is very disappointing. And, plain and simple, they beat us every way you could be beaten. And it is disappointing when you know that you come in and knowing that they're going to be ready to play. There's no doubt they're going to be ready to play, and we weren't ready for the challenge.
Virginia struggled to get by Notre Dame. Most of the Big Ten, the top 10 teams won easily. Michigan, double digits over Maryland. Nevada, they kill everybody in that conference. They destroyed Wyoming, beat them by over 30. North Carolina beat Wake Forest by nearly 40 yesterday. And one of the more exciting games of the day had Louisville just getting by Clemson, beat them by 1 point at home, a win that Louisville desperately needed. So, NBA today, again, you get Team LeBron against Team Giannis, the Greek Freak, in the All-Star game. Brooklyn Nets, Joe Harris, locally, he won the three-point shootout. The Knickerbocker point guard, Dennis Smith, made it to the finals of the skills or the slam dunk. And who won that, Gunzelman? Who won that competition? I didn't watch. I don't care. I was at my friend Joe Iovan's house in New Jersey. And with Danny Timenio. That's right, the guy from Oklahoma City. And then Jason Tatum of the Celtics, who may be on his way to New Orleans for Anthony Davis, he won the skills competition. 1-800-848-WABC, 1-800-848-9222. Here's our good friend Joe Salamino. Good morning, Joe. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sid. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, thank you.
Okay, I'm glad to see that someone in sports talk radio is giving the Islanders some credit. And it's only heard right here on Sid Sports Sunday.
Really? You're not going to get that from Mike or Chris Carlin? Doesn't delve into...
Never.
No?
I wouldn't know. The only thing I know about those guys is what I see on Twitter and Facebook. No tune in over there for me. Speaking of the Islanders, Sid, they got a stretch coming up. 18 games over a 31-day period starting on Thursday. And 13 of those 18 games against the Eastern Conference opponents, which they have to beat.
Yep.
And they got 3 games in 4 days. Out in the Northwest, it's Calgary, Edmonton again, and they had an impressive win last night against Edmonton.
Very.
Where they gave up a 2-goal lead and scored three straight to win 5-2. The big key about the Islanders this year has been the play of the goaltender.
I was going to say, forgetting about some of these young guys who can light the lamp, the goaltending, we talk about Lundqvist in this city all the time. Certainly Baudouin before that. The goaltending for the Islanders has been lights out.
1-2 in the league, goals against average and save percentage. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, no, shocking.
As an Islander fan, I'm happy about that, so let's see what happens.
I'm also happy to see they're going to play the first round of the playoffs back on the island at the Nassau Coliseum. All you folks that down there by the Meadowbrook Parkway in beautiful Uniondale, Long Island, get your team back for the first round of the playoffs. I kind of like that.
You know what? It's great for me if somehow I can get tickets. The Nassau Coliseum is only a 20-minute ride from North Babylon.
You got to call the Fan, and you got to ask for either Jay Berman or Peter Schwartz, CBS Radio Network. Those guys are the Islander fans in the city. They'll get you tickets.
Oh, well, I'll manage somehow. I got some friends who have tickets. Now, two things about baseball.
Yeah, good.
Okay, CC Sabathia calling it a career. You know what? His body, it's been taking a toll on him the past 5 years, with the weight and everything, the bad right knee, which is his plant foot. I hope he goes out on top, and I hope he has a season like Mike Mussina did back in 2008. 18, maybe win 20 games this year, go out on top. And
well, that was, by the way, you mentioned maybe 20. Mussina only won 20 once, and it was, in fact, in his very last season with the Yanks. That's right.
Yeah. And one final thing, and Sid, you're going to love this because this is going to be a good promotional tie-in regarding Jacob DeGrom and the Mets. I heard Joseph Abboud is buying some extra special navy blue pinstripe material when DeGrom becomes a free agent in 2 years. Sid, have a great day, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Great job, Joe.
Take care.
Abboud is busy right now trying to make up some suits for Bernie and I for the big Israeli Day Parade, which... Again, a huge honor bestowed upon me from my dear friend Heshy Organbaum and the fine people at Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. Going to have me on that first float. And in turn, because I love Bernard, he's my boy, and he is loves the state of Israel. He's a Zionist. We had Heshy on the air. Heshy was announcing how I was bestowed this great honor. And I said, hey, let's get Bernard there too. So Bernie's going to come as well. And Abboud is actually making suits. Maybe they'll be all, knit Israeli flags down our ass to who the hell knows. Could be hilarious. But that's what Abboud is working on now. He's done with the Patriots and the Red Sox, although he's getting ready for spring training because the Red Sox are, in fact, once again the favorites to get by the Yankees and win the NL East. But I would say this. The Yanks, they're going to be right there. Look, last year the Yankees won 100. 101 with the playoff win over Oakland. Red Sox won 108, and the Yankees really had to deal with a rash of injuries. Rash. Now, I understand it's all about the pitching. I get it. And again, as I mentioned in the very first segment, if Paxton from Seattle comes here and pitches well, and you get a full season of Jay Happ, spent most of last year in Toronto, and Severino pitches like he has for years. I know he struggled in the second half last year, but still found a way to win 19 games. Not a terrible threesome. It's not the Mets. It's not one of the best in baseball. Severino, Paxton, and Happ with Tanaka as your 4 and CC as your 5, but it's certainly formidable. So if the Yankees can stay healthy offensively, and Gary Sanchez needs to come back with a better season, and he will because it can't be worse. But when I say better season, I mean significantly better, not it can't be worse. He's got to be like he was a couple years ago. And Judge stays healthy, and Tulowitzki gives you something till Didi gets back. And Yankees could be dangerous. I know you want Harper. You got Stanton. Stanton had I know you got off to a very rough start last year, struck out 5 times, twice in the first week, never been done by a Yankee. But when it was all said and done, led the Yanks in homers, knocked in over 100 runs, or 100, I think, to be exact. But a pretty good year. Year 1 in the Bronx, a lot of pressure in New York City. I expect that Stanton will be calmer this year and maybe put up even bigger numbers. There's your Bryce Harper right there. And I covered Giancarlo Stanton for many, many years down in Miami. He's a beast. He's a beast. If him and Judge can stay healthy all year, that 1-2 punch, Yankee fans should have very little to worry about. All right, 1-800-848-WABC, 1-800-848-9222. Coming up next hour with his Minute Sports Spectacular, the very talented Curtis Sliwa. Danny B will make a couple of picks for us on this busy NBA and college basketball afternoon. Former New York Met great Ron Darling on the 2019 New York Mets, and the latest with Jacob DeGrom. and former UCLA and St. John's head basketball coach, now a big-time analyst for the Pac-12 Network and Fox Sports, Steve Lavin. All of that next hour, only right here on 77 WABC.
This is Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda every Sunday, 77 WABC. 1, 2, 3. Sid Sports Sunday, every Sunday from the NJDiet.com studios, 77 WABC New York, a Cumulus station. This is Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda, Sid Rosenberg, the stories, the stats, the edge.
From the corner, 17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan, open, Chicago with the lead. The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship.
The moments.
Off to the Devils, plays it cross ice into the far corner. Matteau swoops in to intercept. Matteau behind the net, swings it in front. He's down. Matteau, Stefan Matteau, and the Rangers have one more hill to climb, baby. But it's through Vancouver. The Rangers are headed to the finals.
This is Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda on 77 WABC. Now, Sid Rosenberg.
Got to tell you, I still get chills when I hear the great Howie Rose make that call. Matteau. And the Rangers, of course, would climb that last hill, beating the Vancouver Canucks in 7 games. I don't think you guys feel old. I really don't. But earlier this week, Bernie and I, on the best morning show in New York City, the Bernie and Sid in the Morning Show, here on WABC, 6 to 10 every weekday morning, had Gary Sinise on. Gary Sinise, of course, one of the more memorable parts in cinema history when he played the great Lieutenant Dan in the movie Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was 25 years ago. You remember when we waited, Ranger fans, 50 years? Those douchebag Islander fans would chant 50 years at the Ranger games all the time. And then Mark Messier and that group finally delivered a Stanley Cup. 25 years. So we've started another great streak, if you will, for Ranger fans. Although they've been playing much better lately. I love the guy Quinn as the coach. And some of these young players are very, very good. And I think the Rangers are on the right path. But, you know, for the first time in a long time, you go back to the Isles, right? They won those 4 Stanley Cups. You can make the argument with those great Canadian teams and certainly the great Edmonton teams that those Islander teams, Bossy, Trottier, Billy Smith, Clark Gillies, Nystrom, the list goes on and on. Dennis Potvin, all those Hall of Famers. That may have been the greatest group ever assembled. And after they won all those cups and beat the Rangers a bunch during those playoffs, guys like Ronnie Duguay and Eddie Mio, for many, many years, the Rangers were the better team, many years. But this year, the Islanders, my God, are they a huge surprise. You know, I know people don't pay attention this time of year necessarily. The Brooklyn Nets have not been great the last couple of weeks, but they're still a big surprise. Locked in at top 5-6 seed in the Eastern Conference and playing about 500 basketball. Fresh off a big night last night for Brooklyn Net hopeful in Charlotte, North Carolina, where today they'll play the All-Star game, the Greek Freak team against LeBron James' team. Our very own Joe Harris of the Brooklyn Nets won the three-point competition.
You know, I'm just fortunate to be here. You know, we were talking about it coming in. Obviously, the field was stacked. You know, you got some of the best shooters of all time, and Dirk and Steph, great shooters in their own regard. So just an honor to be here, honor to compete with everybody.
So that's Harris, and Nets have been a nice surprise. The Islanders have been terrific. And that's what we've got basically now until baseball. Now, the good news is this week, both the Mets in Port St. Lucie on Tuesday and your Yankees in Tampa on Wednesday. Spring training got going. In fact, over the next day or two, both teams will have their full squads down in South Florida or Central Florida, ready to compete this year. Yankees, a bit of news yesterday or the day before. CC Sabathia has called it quits. He's not going to get the send-off like Mariano Rivera or Derek Jeter or in the NBA, Dwayne Wade for that matter. But he's had a very, very good career. Did, in fact, win a World Series with the Yankees back in 2009. And now CC Sabathia will pitch this season for the last time. And he said this about that just a couple days ago.
You guys mean so much to me. All I ever wanted, for people to remember me as is just as a good teammate. Me going out and giving everything I have and leaving it all out on the field. It's been a great ride, being able to win the World Series, open up a new stadium, just so many countless different memories that I'll have and can take back with me, throughout the years of being a Yankee. It's priceless. It's been great.
Yankees should be very, very good this year. Again, Boston on paper maybe a little better, but I would like to see the Yankees have a full season of Judge, and Didi will be back at some point. You got to get something, obviously, out of Tulowitzki. And you got to think Sanchez has a better year. And if those things do happen and the Yankees get something out of Paxson, the pitcher they got from the Mariners, a full season of J. Happ, last year with Toronto most of the year. And if they get something out of the other two, Sabathia and Tanaka, with Severino fresh off a 4-year, $40 million deal just a couple of days ago, the Yanks should be real good. Now, I mentioned Severino fresh off the new deal. Jacob DeGrom, that's becoming an issue with the Mets. Here are the facts quickly, and we'll speak to Ron Darling about this on this show later. DeGrom's going to be 31 years old this year. That's not the Mets' fault. That's not the Mets' fault. He is desperate. Comes off an unbelievable season, wins the Cy Young, one of the great seasons ever, a Dwight Gooden, Pedro Martinez type season, and he wants his money. But if you're the Mets, it would be idiotic to give him his money. Fact is, this year, Jacob DeGrom is set to make $17 million. 17, folks. Let me tell you that after their 4th season of service with guys that had very good years, Clayton Kershaw, great year after year 4, made $11 million for the Dodgers. Justin Verlander, less than 10. Max Scherzer, less than 10. DeGrom's getting $17 million. DeGrom's getting $7 million more than Severino. DeGrom's almost getting more than Severino will get the next 2 years. Now, look, if he has another big year this year for the Mets, DeGrom, arbitration eligible next year, he may get $22 million, maybe upwards of $25 million. Right? Arenado just got $25 million from the Rockies. And at that point, it would make sense for the Mets to sit down and talk about a 3-year deal. But if you're the Mets and you're on the hook for $17 million this year for a guy that's going to be 31 years old, you're not running back to the table to give this guy a 5-year deal. So again, the Mets are right here. DeGrom is wrong. We'll talk to Ron Darling about this. You'll hear his response. I love DeGrom too. I'm a diehard Met fan. Guy's he's my best pitcher. Him and Syndergaard, 1 in 1A. But you got to be smart about this. Right? And Brody and the Mets are doing the right thing. And for DeGrom to come out a couple days ago and pull that Matt Harvey nonsense, well, maybe I'll limit my innings. Maybe I won't give it my all. Are you kidding me? Jacob DeGrom, are you kidding me? Go out there, bust your ass, have a great year again, and next year, I promise, in arbitration, you'll get upwards of $20 to $25 million. Then we'll talk. But for him to pull that nonsense a couple of days ago, that was very disappointing. If you're a Met fan and you're watching this saga, there is no way, and I haven't heard Joe Beningo or Evan Roberts or any of those guys, there is no way you can be siding with DeGrom here. That's ridiculous. So we'll talk more about that later on as well. Tim Tebow, of course, he's still with the Mets. You know that Steve Spurrier, the great college football coach, all those years with the Florida Gators, some decent years in South Carolina as well. You know that Steve Spurrier is the coach of the Orlando team in this new ridiculous Alliance of American Football League? Did you know that? Did you know that Steve Spurrier reached out to Tim Tebow to play quarterback? And Tebow said, I'm a baseball player, baby. I'm a New York Met. And not only is Tim Tebow a New York Met, but he's excited about what may come this season.
Before, I didn't know what I was doing. It was my first time. Then last year, I didn't play I didn't run, or I didn't play one snap of outfield, one pitch of outfield. I only took a few at-bats, and most of those I probably took step backs because I was trying to do it with bad form and pain. So, then had to wait and heal up. So I feel like this will be hopefully a good spring training for him.
All right, Tim Tebow. Now let's get to the biggest sports story of the day, and that was what transpired not in a courtroom. I think most fans don't understand this. The suit, I guess, where Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid won. There are reports they got 50 to 80 million. No one will confirm and or deny that. That was a collective bargaining agreement sit down. It was not in a civil court. It was not in a court of law. It was a CBA decision. So Colin Kaepernick did not go to court, sue the NFL, and win. He did not do that. In fact, you're going to hear in a couple of seconds here from his attorney, the same guy that represented Michael Jackson, one of the very famous defense attorneys, like the guys me and Bernie have on, Joe Tacopina, Arthur Aidala, Jose Baez. He's got Geragos, Kaepernick. And they did win in the CBA talks, and those guys are getting paid. On top of that, I will say this, because I'm all over social media with this stuff. Twitter, at Sid Rosenberg. Instagram, Sid Rosenberg. Facebook, Sid Rosenberg. I think a lot of guys and girls out there think that because Kaepernick won, part of the agreement was that he couldn't play in the NFL anymore. That is 1,000% incorrect. In fact, Eric Reid, who was a teammate of Colin in San Francisco, was also with Colin on this lawsuit. They both get paid. Reid has already signed a 3-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. So if you were under the impression that Colin Kaepernick, part of the deal was he can't play anymore, you're wrong. In fact, his attorney, Geragos, thinks he'll play this year. Don't forget, the Carolina Panthers, the same team that just signed Eric Reid, who won in this lawsuit, they don't have a quarterback this year. Their starting quarterback, Cam Newton, is out for the year with an injury. They need a quarterback. So yesterday on CNN, my friend Ana Cabrera, I've been on with her a bunch of times myself on CNN, she interviewed Mark Geragos, Kaepernick's attorney, and they talked about that specifically, Kaepernick coming back this year, even after winning the CBA just 2 days ago and playing in the NFL.
I talked to Colin today, not about anything else than his desire to play.
So he wants to play in the NFL again.
He absolutely wants to play. He wants to compete at the highest level. I mean, this is a competitive young man. He's only 31 years old. This is not somebody who's over the hill. This is someone who's in his prime. You get smarter at that position, and he's wise beyond his years.
You only took one cut. You didn't take the cut where you actually predicted the teams he may play for. You should have done that. Patriots, Panthers, there was one more, Guns, you remember? He actually mentioned 3 teams in that CNN interview that he thinks Colin has a very good shot of playing for. Anyway, going back to how I started this conversation, this was a CBA deal, not a court. And if it sounds confusing, maybe his attorney Geragos can explain it right here.
The difference between the criminal system, where you're fighting over somebody's liberty, and the civil justice system, which is anything that's not criminal, is all you're doing is fighting over money. That's what a civil justice is. So whether you file in a court, or you go to arbitration, or you go to a mediation, or in this case a collective bargaining agreement, all an arbitrator, all a judge, and ultimately if you go to court, all a jury can do is just shift money around. That's what we do.
Well, let me explain my feelings on this. Now, if you listen to Bernie and Sid in the morning, you know that Bernie and I are lockstep in this one. Lockstep. I think Colin Kaepernick is a phony, grandstanding prick. That's what I think. He did not want to do this. This was his girlfriend's idea. If you would have said to Colin Kaepernick when he started kneeling, hey, Colin, there's a good chance you're never going to play in the NFL again, he never would have done it. He never would have done it. Now, after it became obvious that nobody wanted to sign him, after it became obvious that nobody wanted to sign him, then all of a sudden he became Mr. Social Justice. Remember him with the 49ers when he played in the Super Bowl? He had a really short haircut. Now he's wearing an afro. Every picture I see of Colin Kaepernick, he wears an afro. I saw him play at Nevada. I saw him play with the 49ers. No afro. By the way, grew up with a white mother, lived in a white neighborhood. So when people say to me, why do you have a problem with Colin? Listen, here's where Bernie and I do disagree. I do think there's an issue. I don't think it's nearly as big as Colin wants you to believe. I think they conflate it and exaggerate it, and they do demonize cops. Let's not forget, folks, when Colin Kaepernick started this, he showed up at practice one day wearing socks, which depicted cops as pigs. Peaceful protest, my ass. He showed up at practice with socks that depicted cops as pigs. That's hate. That's hate in your heart. There's nothing more you can say about it. This is not a peaceful protest. This is not a man that all of a sudden woke up one day and thought about the injustice. This is his girlfriend riling him up, wears a pair of hateful socks, and now he's what? Martin Luther King? Now he's Muhammad Ali? Now he's Malcolm X? $100 million later? And his sycophants, of course, they're like sheep. White liberals, black ball players. He's a hero. He's a hero. By the way, he may have got another $80 million yesterday. I don't know. And he still may play in the NFL, maybe as early as this year. What has Colin Kaepernick really sacrificed? Honestly, what has he sacrificed? I think we all agree Dr. King sacrificed a lot. Took a bullet. Muhammad Ali came back, obviously had a great career, but I'm not sure what this kid has sacrificed. I never believed from day one his heart was in this. I just believe as time went along and more people hopped on the bandwagon and his buddies and his friends and his sycophants egged him on, he became that guy. Then he had no choice. But I'll also say this. I've never heard any of these men, whether it's Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, all these guys that yell and scream. I mean, LeBron James referring to owners as slave owners. In a league where these guys make millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, is so insulting and so pathetic. I don't know how you take anything that man says serious. And I love LeBron. Love him. Great player. How do you take anything he says seriously? How do you do it? Slave owners? I've never heard these guys once articulate exactly what they're upset about. Not once. You ever see Colin Kaepernick sit down? And I don't care if it's Rachel Maddow and Chris Matthews, who love him, or Sean Hannity, who will rip him a new asshole. I shouldn't say that on a Sunday morning, but I'm going to say it. I don't care who it is. Have you ever seen Colin Kaepernick sit down and say, this is what is wrong with our society? Have you ever heard LeBron James? No, I hate Trump, and the cops hate us. That's the narrative. That's it. Which, of course, is not true. Do I think there's an issue? Sure. I've got a cousin in Atlanta who I saw just 2 weeks ago at the Super Bowl. Great kid. Starting quarterback, straight-A student. My cousin, black kid. He's been stopped twice over the last year. You know why? Because he's black. Now, that does speak to the point that Kaepernick and James and all these guys try to make. And it does happen in bigger numbers than that. But not in the numbers that they want you to believe. And when you're wearing socks that depict cops as pigs and going out there and basically demonizing police at every single turn, I'll ask Kaepernick this, because he'll buy a brand new house now. I'm sure he's got plenty of money. When his window breaks at 3 o'clock in the morning, is he going to call Eric Reed, his buddy in the lawsuit? Or is he going to call the men in blue that he depicted as pigs? Now, if he wants to call Eric Reed, then he wins. He wins. Hey. But he's a hypocrite. And they're all hypocrites. And this was bad business for the NFL. If the NFL paid him $100 million, that is a drop in the bucket for the NFL. That's a drop in the bucket. $50 million, $80 million, $100 million, that's a dinner for Roger Goodell. They want this to go away. They've had enough. So in this case, believe it or not, everybody won. Kaepernick won because he gets his money and he gets a win. The NFL wins because they pay this guy a drop in the bucket and now he's got to shut up. That's part of the agreement. Maybe he even plays again. So everybody wins with this. That's the God's honest truth. People are saying Kaepernick wins, NFL loses. No, NFL wins. They can't wait to cut this guy a check. Just shut up. Please shut up. Nobody kneels anymore. Go back to the Super Bowl. People talked more about Gladys Knight's rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner than the actual boring football game. And deservedly so. She was magnificent. Nobody cares. It's enough. Let us enjoy our football. Let us enjoy our basketball. And let's move on. Now, Brian Kilmeade will come up next. This guy is a huge presence, along with Ducey and Ainsley, mornings on Fox and Friends. Then he does a wonderful radio show every day from 9 a.m. to noon. In fact, on this station at 10 a.m. after me and Bernie, we go to Brian Kilmeade. So you can hear him every single day right here. He's going to join me coming up next. A big day for President Trump on Friday. He'll talk about Kaepernick, Major League Baseball, and even Smollett. Another story where the left, in their hysteria to do anything it takes to embarrass Donald Trump, will do whatever it takes, even if it means getting caught as a hoax. Ron Darling will stop by, too, and so will great basketball coach and now basketball analyst Steve Lavin. Going to be a red-hot Sid Sports Sunday. Plus, the phones are open, too. Danny B with picks, all of it. We'll take a short break. Fox News, Brian Kilmeade on the other side.
77 WABC with the new Bernie and Sid in the morning. Brian Kilmeade.
He ran for president. Everyone knows what kind of business he was in. International business, which most in Congress can't even get their head around, doesn't know how to approach. And these young lawyers are going to look to cut their teeth and make their name by investigating a president they deem as very unpopular on the left. That is not how it's supposed to be done.
Brian Kilmeade. Weekdays 10 to noon after Bernie and Sid in the morning.
Now on Echo devices.
77
WABC.
77 WABC. Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda every Sunday. New York sports and more. 77 WABC and the free WABC radio app.
Let's get out here with a W.
Well, I got $1.4 billion, but I'm not happy with it. I think what will happen is, sadly, we'll be sued, and sadly, it'll go through a process, and happily we'll win, I think.
Well, that's what he's counting on. He'll lose until the Supreme Court gets him a win. That was President Trump on Friday. Again, don't forget, coming up next hour, huge day of college basketball yesterday. How about that Kentucky effort against Tennessee? My God. Former UCLA and St. John's basketball coach, my good buddy Steve Lavin, will be here. And with all the Met news and Jacob DeGrom, former New York Met great Ron Darling next hour as well. But I did want to do something today a little different. Since we started this show back in August, I promised everybody this would be just sports. Even though, yes, I've had Bill O'Reilly on this show, Sid Sports Sunday. He came on, he talked football. I've had Chuck Todd, my dear friend, on this show, Sid Sports Sunday. He came on and talked about betting on football. Tried to stay away from the political stuff. I saved that for me and Bernie during the week. But President Trump's address on Friday was unprecedented and so big. I wanted to bring on a guy that could, A, talk politics and sports. And there's very few guys that can do that, by the way. There's me and Brian. That's about it. Brian does an amazing job on Fox and Friends every morning alongside Ainsley and Ducey. Then he does a tremendous job 9 to 12 every day on Fox News Radio, which, of course, we go to Brian 10 o'clock every morning right here after me and Bernie, one of the great young talents in the business today, my friend Brian Kilmeade. Good morning, Brian.
Good to talk sports, Sid.
It is, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let me start with Trump. I thought he did a good job on Friday. I thought he did what he had to do. The fact is that was a lousy deal they offered him. So I was okay with him calling for a non-emergency, even though I don't really believe in my heart of hearts it is an emergency. But he's got to do what he's got to do. I mean, I would have stayed away from Obama starting a world war with North Korea. That was silly. He does some of that. But I think for the most part, he did what he had to do. What did you think?
It was typical Trump. I mean, he wings it. I mean, for number one, I personally would have put out talking points in front of him. I mean, I don't know. The whole speech was delayed. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, they got some final thoughts, and hey, Mr. President, this is what you stay away from, and this is what you want to lead with. Instead, he walks out without any notes, and he just kind of wings it like only Trump can do. And they just went to the point where he said, "I'm declaring a state of emergency." Game on, essentially. So, and then he's playing golf over the weekend because, to his credit, he did not move from the White House through that entire shutdown. So he's taking a little bit of a break. See, Sid, I have a different feeling. Not only do I think it's a state of emergency, I believe that Obama should have declared it. I mean, this is an emergency. I mean, I can't give his name yet, but.
1, 2, 3. Sid Sports Sunday. Every Sunday from the NJDiet.com studios. 77 WABC New York. On Cumulus Station. This is Sid Sports Sunday. Driven by Ramsey Mazda. Around the country. Around New York. The stories you're talking about. The stats you need.
There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yeah! Finds Christian Leitner with a 50-foot pass, and he puts it in from 15 for the game winner.
These are the moments you won't forget.
5-5 and a delirious 10th inning. Can you believe this ball game at Shea? Oh, brother. 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
This is Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda on 77 WABC. Now, Sid Rosenberg.
All right, very busy hour coming up. Former college basketball coach, now big-time analyst Steve Lavin, former great New York Met Ron Darling, and your phone calls and Kurt Sleewas. Let's get to Danny B right away. Danny, of course, had an amazing football season on this show, picking games, and last couple of weeks has done very well in basketball as well. He is the worldwide leader when it comes to handicapping in that business today. So without further ado, Bruce, let's play this.
This segment is sponsored by DBWins.com.
Danny Bianculo, his website is dbwins.com. He's so good on this show, he's got his own show Saturday nights here at WABC called Inside the Numbers, and he's become a dear friend. We got a couple of minutes here. Danny B, good morning, pal. How are you?
Good morning, Sid. How are you?
Good. I know it's a no football, but it's a busy day. I mean, I look at some of these college basketball games. For example, Michigan State's going to host Ohio State today. St. John's has a huge game later on today against Villanova. You got the Team LeBron as a 5.5-point favorite over the Greek Freaks team in the NBA All-Star game. Heck, you've even got the Hockey Rangers in Pittsburgh this afternoon at 12:30, ready to drop the puck against Crosby and Malkin. So no football, but really, Danny, no shortage of stuff to bet on if you like betting sports, even today.
No doubt. There's some great matchups. The numbers are a little high today, starting early with the Ohio State line. I try to avoid big numbers, double digits, Sid. I found a little value today. I think St. John's has a chance to cover the number today at +4. They play pretty good at home, 11-3. Nova's no walk in the park, but I smell a possible upset for the Johnnies.
What do you think about betting an NBA All-Star game? No, I know it sounds crazy. I know. But the West did win most years for a very, very long time. And even the total numbers, it always seems to go over. They place it extremely high, and it still goes over. You just say stay away?
312 points. It's a sideshow. It ain't a game. It's a sideshow.
Right.
You can't bet. Back in the day, it was different 20 years ago with the All-Star games, but no more. Now there's no defense. It's all up and down the court. 312, chances are it's going to go over, but right. I don't touch a game like that, Sid. I like Colorado a little bit tonight in hoops over Arizona,
yes.
-4, 4.5. They play well at home, 9-2. East Carolina early playing Tulsa. Two bad teams, but East Carolina grabbing 6. It's appetizing. They play decent at home. Tulsa's bad on the road. This is some of the things I look for. Teams at home that play good. I mean, good. I said it last week. And teams that struggle on the road and a good number. The number is very important. And speaking of numbers, Sid, anybody that needs help, here's my number, 1-800-308-9003.
How has it been? I'm just curious now that football's over, Danny, in terms of phone calls and the action on the website. I mean, obviously it's going to take a hit. Football reigns supreme, but do people take a couple of weeks off, kind of catch their breath, maybe start to inch back towards March Madness? Or have you noticed that people are still gunning away?
No, there's a Super Bowl hangover for sure in both arenas, as handicappers and as sports book directors. I sat with PointsBet the other day.
They're huge fans of mine and yours.
Oh, we love him. Johnny Atkin, great guy. Me and Jamie went with James from the station. We spent some time with him. Great. Listen, they're high end. This is a great organization. A lot of integrity. PointsBet.com. I love him, Sid. And they even said they get a little 3-week, 4-week hiatus. So did DraftKings. They all say the same. And at the end of February, they'll start sniffing around. Some of my best investors come out after football season because they don't care about what sport. They just want to make money.
Right. In college basketball, usually that's a pretty good spot. I know even my one try at your business many years ago from Mark Mariani and Peter Gold, VegasInsider.com. Sure. I actually won the college basketball season. I picked one year 61%, got a plaque that I still have in my house from Peter Gold, got actually a very nice size check, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I didn't look at trends or home records. I just went with the better teams most of the time, and I got lucky one year. But that seems to be the sport, very quietly, where people make a ton of money.
Well, there's value, and I do remember that run, and I do know Peter Gold. The time I met him, he looked like Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, that's exactly right.
He picked me up in one of his fancy cars.
Yep.
That was years ago.
Down by Bal Harbor in North Miami Beach. Great guy.
Yeah, no, I had a good time with Pete. That was back in 11. Me and Donaghy went down there and watched Dallas take down Miami that series.
Well, somebody forgot to tell LeBron the game was 4 quarters. And if you remember that series, LeBron took a vicious beating in Miami. That was his first NBA Finals appearance player as a Miami Heat, and he just did not show up in any of those games inside the 4th quarter. And then after that, he was pretty good.
Well, they took the first game from Dallas, and Donaghy, I remember him saying Dallas is going to take the series. In Miami, of course, they told him he's crazy.
Right.
But we saw what happened. No, this is a great time of the year. Unfortunately, there's little interest until March Madness, and then you get the NBA Finals. And what I've noticed with my players, as long as you're winning during basketball, they'll play the baseball with you. But if you kill them in March, they're not playing again until August.
Right, till football.
July.
Right,
Yeah,
they disappear.
correct.
Even though right now the MLB Network will air 200 spring training games leading up to opening day. So if you got the fix for baseball, if you like to go to Citi Field and or the Bronx and sit there during a gorgeous afternoon and watch baseball and then watch the scoreboard for 7 or 8 other games of action, a lot of bettors will tell you that's the perfect day for a gambler. Perfect.
I love my baseball. As you know, as everybody knows, that's my sport of choice. Speaking of baseball, you said something about Stanton. He's going to have a good year.
Big year.
He's going to have a great year. 45 dingers, 125 plus RBIs.
I agree.
And 308 at the plate.
You don't need Bryce Harper. Yankees are just being ridiculous. Yeah. Machado, I can see. Machado's fine. I do think Machado will sign with the Yankees before the White Sox, before it's all said and done. But Yanks offensively should be fine. So let's do. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, the sideshow. Why ain't these guys signed yet? They used to be done by Christmas. Now it's almost March and they're still not signed.
They want a lot of money, and teams just aren't doing it like they used to. That's the bottom line. They're just
I don't like it. It should be set in stone. Let's play some baseball. We're already in camp. Let's get rid of these contracts. And what's his name? Colin? That's $60 million plus, whatever. For what? Kneeling?
Colin Kaepernick? Oh, yeah, Colin. Yeah, funny. Patriots, Colin. So listen, one more time before we run here, I want you to you gave out a good job here, Danny B, 2 or 3 college basketball picks at the very beginning of our conversation. Shoot those out again. Give everybody your phone number, the website, and what time they can catch you on this station Saturday nights, and then go enjoy your beautiful wife, Jamie, and have a fun Sunday.
I will. Well, I think the game that presents the most value is tonight with Colorado, minus the 4.5. I like St. John's' chances, but it's tough to go against Nova. I wouldn't bet against Johnny's. East Carolina grabbing 6 looks good. My phone number, very easy to remember, 1-800-308-9003. Website, easier to remember, dbwins.com. Did you get my candle, by the way?
No, you sent me a candle?
We left your gift on the table. Somebody stole it?
Oh, in this place? Are you kidding me? It's probably in Nancy Sleeper's bedroom.
It had a note. Sid,
they don't care.
What?
Are you kidding me?
It had your name on it.
Yeah, so did Steve Schrippel left me 10 spaghetti sauces with my name on it, and Ron Kuby's been in it for 2 years.
Dude, are you kidding me? It was from Big Louise's wife. She's one of the Jersey housewife girls. She hangs out with them. So they brought you a special candle, and I got more of them. But, I'm sorry they stole it.
Well, let me go look for it. Who knows? I got a box of pajamas outside my door. That's still here, so maybe it's still here. Listen, I love you to death. You're great. Your show Inside the Numbers is great. You're great with me. Have a terrific Sunday. Danny, good luck today, and I'll see you Wednesday, I guess.
Yeah, you missed the naked girl story. We'll save that for next week.
All right, that sounds... What?
Well, do you have a second?
No, I don't. Save it for next week. That's a great tease. That's a radio tease at its best. I love you, bro.
I love you. Ramsey, have a great weekend.
You
pal.
too.
Bye-bye.
The naked girl story. Danny B, the naked girl story. Oh, my God. Anyway, he talked about college basketball. Huge day yesterday. Been an unbelievable season. He used to coach UCLA and St. John's. Now he's a big name at Fox Sports and the Pac-12 Network. Steve Lavin is next. I'm looking for confirmation on this. My dear friend C.J. Vaca down in Boca Raton, Florida, just sent me this. And here's what it says. Source, after meeting with his agent and examining all the offers on the table, Bryce Harper has made his decision and is tentatively planning to announce in a Players Tribune article, Harper is taking his talents to Philadelphia. Reports are he's about to announce a 10-year, $310 million deal. We knew this when the Phillies got JT Realmuto from the Marlins last week. We talked about that becoming the most probable destination. This is horrible news for Met fans like me. The Phillies already this offseason picked up a bunch of big-time talent, Segura and Realmuto and Andrew McCutchen and others. So, again, this has not been confirmed, but I am getting reports. Bryce Harper, Philadelphia Phillies, 10 years, $310 million. We'll talk to Ron Darling and Steve Lavin this hour.
77 WABC.
Back here on Sid Sports Sunday. Of course, this is week 2 without the National Football League. We're a couple of weeks removed from the Patriots getting that big Super Bowl 53 win over the Rams. And we have decided, it's what the season dictates. Now it's all about college basketball, pro basketball, the NHL, and, of course, spring training baseball. Huge week this week. Both the Mets and the Yankees got their spring training started in Port St. Lucie and Tampa. College basketball, Seth Greenberg joined us last week. I love him. But my next guest I really love. Had him on many, many, many times over the years. And let me say this about Steve Lavin. He's one of the most underrated and underappreciated coaches ever. Let me give you these stats. In his years at UCLA, in the first and second round, his teams were 10-1. The only man ever to do better in those 2 rounds, Dean Smith. In his 6-year stay at UCLA, Steve Lavin had 5 of his teams in the Sweet 16. The only other man to do that, Mike Krzyzewski. And in his 5-year stay at St. John's, he had 3 20-win seasons. The only other 2 men to ever do that, Luke Hornacek and Mike Jarvis. I'm not a lawyer, but folks, I rest my case. Have I proved my point that now he's a great Fox Sports analyst, but whether it's UCLA, St. John's, or assistant coaching, Steve Lavin, one for the ages. Steve, good morning. Welcome to Sid Sports Sunday.
Great to be with you, Sid, on a Sunday, and I appreciate the kind words.
Well, they're all true. I mean, I know that we've had discussions in the past. I mean, you got sick here. Thank God you're okay today, Steve, but you had the cancer bout when you were here in Queens with St. John's, and that kind of derailed you, obviously, just a little bit. But you really, the numbers I threw out there, those teams, that's for real. And yet it always seemed like, Steve, you were kind of in the, in the background of some of the coaches at those 2 legendary schools.
Well, you understand when you coach at UCLA, you're following in the footsteps of someone named John Robert Wooden, arguably the greatest coach in sports.
Yeah, but that was long before you were there. You followed, in your defense, a guy named Jim Harrick, and Jim was good. Don't get me wrong, but consistency. You did a terrific job there after Jim.
Yes, but the long big picture is that Coach Wooden retired in 1975. And now, 44 years later, there's 10 coaches that have come through the program. So every 4 years, on average, the UCLA coach is blowing out. So just a little bit more than a student athlete or a student that matriculates through a university, which takes 4 and sometimes 5 years in my case because of my challenges from an academic standpoint. But I was fortunate to be at UCLA 12 years, which was a wonderful opportunity, both as an assistant for 5 years and 7 as a head coach. But whether it's UCLA or St. John's, you look at the great coaches there with Lapchick and McGuire and obviously Coach Carnesecca, 3 Hall of Famers that coach at St. John's University. Very unique in terms of the heritage and the tradition. So you understand when you sign up and you coach in those media markets like New York and LA, that it's going to be challenging, but you have to see the big picture, be grateful, and give thanks, because those experiences set the table for other gifts that reveal. And in my case, it's been opportunities to work at ESPN and Fox and CBS and Turner and the Pac-12 networks. So I'm grateful for the runs and the opportunities Purdue, UCLA, and St. John's allowed me.
Now, you talked about Steve Lavin, the legendary Hall of Fame coaches at St. John's. The only reason why I became a college basketball fan was I lived in Brooklyn. I used to play basketball every single day for the better part of 20 years in Marine Park. And on any given day, you would find any Mullen brother shooting baskets right there. And I fell in love with Chris Mullen, and he was always one of my favorite players. He's in year 4 now, Steve, as the coach. They've been up and down. They did sweep Marquette this year. That was very big. They got a big overtime win against Butler earlier this week. They're one of those teams on the bubble. I mean, you got to assume that Marquette gets in, Villanova gets in. After that, it's a crapshoot with the Big East. What do you think about St. John's chances?
Well, for starters, let's start with Chris Mullen. I grew up in San Francisco when he was playing for the Golden State Warriors, and so he was someone I really admired as well for his play, his feel for the game, and obviously his passing, his moxie, his intelligence, and just the way he could score in a myriad of ways. And now with St. John's, he's got them pointed in the right direction. I love their personnel. Their first 5 as good as any in the country. And that small ball approach that he's employed can really be a challenge for opponents in terms of trying to match up with 5 players that can shoot the 3, put it on the deck, create both shot make and play make. Their challenge is the lack of size because Tariq Owens transferred to Texas Tech and Kasum Yakwe transferred to UConn. And those frontline players that had some size would have given St. John's a little more balance in terms of the depth along the front line. But again, St. John's capable of making a run to the tournament, and they're the type of team, if they get in the tournament, they could win a couple games and get to that second weekend of play. And once you do that, anything is possible. Their strength of schedule in the non-conference, an issue. To their credit, they won those games, but the math, the metrics, the analytics, because that schedule turned out to be so weak, to come back to haunt them. If they don't make the tournament, it'll be because of the weak non-conference schedule. But if they can beat some of the big boys coming down the stretch and pick up a couple big wins in the Big East Conference tournament, St. John's will be dancing and possibly dancing to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. Shamori Pons, I call him St. Pons University, as good as it gets. And obviously L.J. Figueroa contributing with his versatility. And we know about Mustafa Heron. He seems to be picking up momentum coming down the stretch here. Marvin Clark, the transfer from Michigan State, exceptional player both inside and out. And Justin Simon, he's a key because of the ability defensively to shut down the opponent's best player.
Duke had a big week as well, of course, coming back, that epic comeback victory just a couple of nights ago over Louisville. I watched Louisville also fall apart last Sunday against Florida State. In fact, they've dropped 3 out of 4. To me, Louisville becomes an interesting team, but here's Duke. They get a huge win at Virginia last week, the epic comeback against Louisville. Now, LeBron James was even at that game with Rajon Rondo, the Virginia game. He is extolling Zion Williamson's virtues. You get that from LBJ, you're doing pretty good. This Duke team is getting better and better, Steve Lavin. They're probably the best team in the country. What do you think?
Yeah, Duke plays with the greatest margin for error. And what that means is because of their talent, they can have a night where they struggle from the three-point line, but they're so dominant on the glass in terms of getting putbacks and second shot opportunities, they can still find a way to win. Or, they may struggle defensively, but they light you up on offense, or they miss a number of shots from the free throw line, or they turn the ball over. But when you have 3 or 4 future lottery picks on your roster, it allows you the luxury to have a greater margin for error. And Virginia, for example, plays with a razor-thin margin for error because they only have 1 player on their roster that'll be a first-round draft choice. So 4 lottery picks face a team with 1 future first-rounder 90% of the time. Not always. There are exceptions. That's why we play the game, and there's odds in Vegas, and the outcome's in doubt. But most of the time, the team with 4 lottery picks is going to win. And, of course, Mike Krzyzewski, decade after decade, knows how to get his teams to the winner's circle and is a Hall of Fame coach. So you put that all together, and Duke will be a tough out and the favorite to win the national title.
Let's go back to your team, UCLA, for a second. The Pac-12, very light. I mean, Washington's going to get in. Maybe Arizona State gets in, Steve, and that may be it. I don't know any other team that's really going to go out there and challenge anybody. And, you said, every 4 years, UCLA seems to hire a new coach. Steve, Alford couldn't get it done. I know Murray is there now, Barstow. But what do you think the problem is after so many years of amazing teams with Wooden, very good teams with guys like you and Jim Harrick? Why has it been so barren for UCLA the last couple of years?
Well, the challenge when you turn coaches over on such a regular basis is you never have continuity. If you look at national championships, 95% of the Division I national championships have been won at schools that have had a coach in place for decade after decade after decade, whether it was Adolph Rupp, John Wooden, Roy Williams, Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim, Lute Olson. More recently, an example would be Jay Wright, going on his 17th year at Villanova, and had a Final Four years ago, then went through a tough stretch. They stayed the course with him even when he didn't make the NCAA tournament, and now 2 out of 3 national championships. Coach Wooden didn't win his first national championship until his 16th season at UCLA, but then he won 10 out of 12. He was there 27 years, but it was his last 12 years he had success. His first 15 years, he had lots of challenges, but he was learning, growing, getting a better grasp for his craft, like any industry, writing or dancing or directing or producing or what you do or what a coach or a teacher does or any leader. It takes time. It takes seasoning. And UCLA fires their coaches every 4 years while other schools stay the course with their coach. Tom Izzo, 20-plus years. Before him, Judd Heathcote, 20-plus years. So 95% of the national championships are won by coaches that are at their respective schools for sometimes 20, 30, or even 40 years in Mike Krzyzewski's case.
Excellent point. Steve Lavin, of course, great coach, St. John's, UCLA, assistant coaching jobs all over the country, and now doing a great job at Fox Sports and the Pac-12 network. Let's get to the ACC for a second. We mentioned a couple of teams already from that conference. I know Duke and Clemson played yesterday, but some of the best teams from the country reside right there. They've got a chance to put about 8 teams, maybe 8, in this big dance. Would you say, Steve, that the ACC is the most talented conference in the country, or is the SEC right there?
It's interesting. You can build a case that the Big Ten is the deepest conference.
Okay.
But the ACC is right there, and the Southeastern Conference as well. We're looking at 3 great ones. It'd be like De Niro, Duvall, and Denzel, right? All 3 are great actors.
Yes.
Let's go with, tap dancers.
I'm surprised they left out. You went Duvall and De Niro. I would have thought Pacino or Marlon Brando.
Let's throw them in there, case in point. Right? There we go. We're talking about 5 great ones. And that's the case when you look at these conferences. I think the ACC has more teams at the top capable of winning a national championship. I think the Big Ten is the deepest. Michigan State, having outstanding seasons. Purdue is a crew that surprised people this year with what they lost after last season's run. They still are right there contending and probably have the most favorable schedule. Purdue has not the easy schedule. There is no easy schedule in conference play, but they have the most favorable schedule. They're now at a point where they won't play a ranked team the rest of the way up until the conference tournament, and that could be their edge because of the fact that Michigan and Michigan State have tougher roads ahead of them. But my point is at the top, ACC, more teams that could win the national title. Big Ten, the deepest. And the Southeastern Conference, a mix. There's some teams that could win it. I think Tennessee, Rick Barnes doing a marvelous job. They don't have the depth of some other teams, which means absorbing foul trouble or a player that tweaks an ankle in a critical game can derail your season, where if you have a little more depth, that allows you to have an injury or foul trouble and not cost you your season as you try and win a national title. And this is a year where the Pac-10 Pac-12 now, obviously well documented, is having kind of epic struggles. But they'll return to form. They have the fundamentals to be great again. In terms of
they may.
schools.
But listen, I watched those games late Saturday night. Teams like Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, Washington State. Not only are they not playing very good basketball, Steve, they are tough to watch.
Yeah, this year they won't return to form.
No.
But as a conference, it's cyclical. There were years where the ACC was awful, years where the Big Ten struggled. And the Pac-12 now, no doubt, because of a number of variables, the FBI investigation that hit Oregon, Arizona, as well as USC, the transition, new coach at Cal Berkeley, coach who's only been a couple years at Stanford. So as a result, when you look at that situation, some kids that went out early, some kids that were hyped that haven't lived up to their potential. There's been some injuries when you look at Oregon with Bol being out, the exceptional 7-footer. And so kind of a perfect storm that lined up against the Pac-12, but they'll be back, whether it's 2 years from now or 3 years from now. They'll be, back in winning ways, but no doubt struggles this year.
Let's wrap it up with this, Steve. We just witnessed Kyler Murray, the great quarterback at Oklahoma, win the Heisman Trophy. He's been drafted by the Oakland A's. He's decided to go into the NFL draft as well. He was the best player in college football. It was close. Certainly the quarterback, Tua at Alabama right there. Even the kid Haskins, quarterback at Ohio State, he was right there. Right now, today, Steve Lavin, who is the best player in college basketball right now?
Well, let me start with this. How about you give me your top three?
Well, I think most people are going to start with Zion, even though Barrett does the majority of the scoring for Duke. I know, like Campbell has a kid, for example, who's like ninth in all-time scoring, but no one's going to go to him. So, nobody really on Tennessee. Kentucky has four guys that basically share the basketball. Virginia has one guy, Hunter. Really, I got to start with Duke because they've got two such dynamic players in Barrett and Williamson that no other team has that 1-2 scoring punch.
I agree. I think Zion Williamson at this stage appears to be the obvious as the most dominant player in college basketball, and yet also there's the upside. R.J. Barrett intrigues and will be a top 3 pick as well. There's a player to keep an eye on, I believe, has as bright a future in the NBA as any of the names we're talking about, but it's at a different position. It's at the point guard position. Jalen Noel, very gifted passer, shot maker, playmaker with the Washington Huskies. Shooting 50% from long distance. He throws darts, dimes, just with the degree of precision that I haven't seen in recent years. Very shifty in terms of his ability to cut back, change direction, change speeds. Has the size at 6'5" to play over the top. He enjoys the thrill of the pass. Can separate from defenders because of his handles and footwork to create his own shot. And I've had some special ones over the years. St. John's Dwight Hardy and D'Angelo Harrison and Maurice Harkless, Jakar Sampson, UCLA, Baron Davis, Earl Watson, among others. And this kid, Jalen Noel, in terms of a guard, a combo guard, scoring, shot-making, playmaking, has an upside or a future. Just remember, 10 years from now, we'll get back on the phone.
Okay.
We'll do it between now and then as well, but we're going to chuckle about this all-star.
All right, you got it.
Noel.
By the way, Earl Watson, funny you bring him up. My intern back in 2013 in Miami, I got a phone call from Jason Taylor, the Hall of Famer for the Miami Dolphins, and he said, "Sid, you're great at what you do. My sister Joy, she's trying to get into the business. Can you help her out?" So I was the first to hire Joy Taylor. She now works, of course, with Colin Coward, and she's about to marry Earl Watson if she hasn't already.
That's right. She's a sweetheart. I've spent some time with them. Appropriately, it's the day after. Couple days after Valentine's Day now, and those two are definitely sweethearts and two of my favorite people, and they've got a wonderful future ahead of themselves.
Agreed. Hey, listen, it's great to talk to you. It's always a lot of fun, Steve, and love watching you on TV, whether it's Fox or the Pac-12 Network. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk a bunch more before we crown a champion that Monday night in April. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Sid. Take care. Always a pleasure.
You too. The great Steve Lavin on Sid Sports Sunday. We'll take a very short break. We'll be back with more sports right after these words.
77 WABC. Shutdown on 3. 1, 2, 3. Shutdown. Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda, each and every Sunday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. Hey, go give it to you. Let's go get it. 77 WABC.
Back here on Sid Sports Sunday, big week this week. Both the Mets down in Port St. Lucie and the Yankees in Tampa started spring training. And this year especially, lots of expectations, both clubs. We know the Red Sox won the World Series inside the AL East, but the Yankees come off a 101-win season when you include the wild card win over Oakland. They're a very good baseball team. And the Mets, well, some people think the Mets are not just the best team in the NL East, but maybe inside the National League. Now, one guy that knows an awful lot about the Mets being a great team, not just inside the division, but winning a World Series and getting back 2 years later to an NLCS, is one of the greatest pitchers in the history of the Mets organization and is now one of the best TV analysts ever. Doing a great job at SNY, does a great job for MLB Network and Turner. One of my favorite New York Mets of all time, the great Ron Darling. Good morning, Ron.
Sid, thanks for having me on.
Great to talk to you. I don't know if you remember this, but I'm going to date back to 2004.
Yeah.
So there's this new station that starts, TV station. Brian B. Dole is the owner, and he does a football show, which I host, with guys named Scott Zolak and Aaron Taylor, who played for the Green Bay Packers. Then there's a college basketball show, which I host alongside Matt Doherty, Seth Greenberg, and Bob Valvano. Then he does a baseball show, which I host during the College World Series. I want to say it was like Cal State Fullerton against Texas. And who was my partner? You.
I know. Of course I remember that. We had a blast doing it, too.
We really did. And then B-Dole sold that. Now that is the CBS network. So if you ever watch Boomer Esiason or those guys, that used to be CSTV. And we did have a blast. But that was the college days. You were a great pitcher at Yale. But what a career. I want to get to that trade. We talk about the greatest trades in the history of the Mets. Keith Hernandez came cheap. Gary Carter came cheap. Look, I love Lee Mazzilli, Ron, growing up as a kid in Brooklyn. He was my guy. But to get you and Walt for Lee Mazzilli, one of the greatest Met trades ever.
Well, you know, when I think about it, in retrospect, I'm surprised Frank Cashin hasn't gotten more play when he was alive for the Hall of Fame. Put together two amazing organizations, the Mets in the 80s, and, of course, the Orioles in the 60s and 70s. But, at some point, what made that team great, and there were great trades and good signings and all of that. But at some point, we had the best right fielder in the game in Strawberry, arguably the best first baseman in Hernandez, and probably the best catcher in the game in Carter. So it was kind of a super team put together by Frank Cashin, and it was fun to be a part of.
It really was. Now, you're so great with Hernandez, the three of you, Gary Cohen. A lot of folks seem to think all over the country, no disrespect to other guys in town and other cities, you three are the best in baseball when it comes to television. I have no idea, were you and Keith really close as Met teammates, or how was that relationship back then?
That's funny. I think we were really good friends, and we would go out to dinner in the city. Keith, myself, Rusty Staub were some of the only Mets that lived in New York City. So we definitely would have dinner, but I wouldn't say we were close, not like best friends. And our relationship as we've done this baseball broadcasting has been great. We've become really great friends, and I think it shows over the airwaves.
I was talking to Davey Johnson a couple of months ago, Ron, and he had a new book. He has a new book out, I should say, and he had success everywhere, right? Baltimore, Washington, here with the Mets, the Dodgers, Cincinnati, you name it. But I said, Davey, I know it's going to sound crazy because you won a World Series, but a lot of us diehard Met fans feel like to a certain extent your managerial stay was almost a failure. The fact that you guys back to the NLCS 2 years later, lost to the red-hot Earl Hershiser and the Dodgers, but that team maybe should have won 3 or 4. I'm sure you hear that all the time, yes?
I do hear it all the time. I think, we're a team that should have been a super team that ended up having a super year. I think we should have been. It would have been nice if we had been a team that was playing now, not because of the money or any of that, because of the wild card. We certainly would have made the playoffs every single year. '84, we won 90 games, lost out to the Cubs. Won 98 the next year, lost out to the St. Louis Cardinals, and finally got in. So we would have been in it every year. I think if you'd given us a chance to be in it every year, we would have been dangerous. That being said, we had our future ahead of us. We didn't do as well as we should have, and thank God we got one of them.
Well, you look at the rotation, you and Dwight Gooden and Bobby Ojeda and David Cohn comes in 88 and Rick Aguilera, Sid Fernandez. I mean, certainly very formidable. I go back to the teams in the 60s and 70s, Ron Darling, Seaver, Kuzman, Matlack, Gentry, a young Nolan Ryan, certainly very formidable. And yet there are Met fans today that want to put DeGrom, Syndergaard, Wheeler, Matz in that type of category. I don't think they're there, but when you compare this modern-day rotation to the two I just mentioned, do you think it's a worthy comparison?
You know, that's interesting, Sid. I don't think they're there either, but they're on their way, which I think is a testament to as hard as they work. I think that, of course, Syndergaard and Jacob DeGrom would have been 2/5 of that rotation in the 80s. That's how good they are. I don't think Noah Syndergaard has gotten to Dwight Gooden level.
Right.
I think with the season that DeGrom had last year, you could argue he had a Doc Gooden kind of year. But you had what made that rotation strong, and the one in the '60s, of course, is their ability to take the ball every fifth day for 6-7 years in a row, and they haven't been able to do that yet. But they're on their way because as far as pure talent comes, I don't know if anyone can match the talent of these kids with the Mets right now. But talent has to meet the expectations, and hopefully they'll do that starting this year.
The great Ron Darling, 83 through 91 with the Mets, couple of years with Oakland. By the way, a very good season in 82, a 15-game winner for the Oakland A's. And you can watch Ron Darling on SNY, MLB Network, and Turner throughout the season. MLB Network will air more than 200 spring training games. That starts next Friday. Plus, Ron has a new book out this April. I can't wait. The title is 108 Stitches, Loose Threads, Ripping Yarns, and the Darndest Characters from my time in the game. I will say this. We'll go back to this modern-day Met team in a moment. When you played, I'm going to make the argument those were the biggest characters maybe in the history of the game, and maybe, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, they were all your teammates.
Yeah, absolutely, Sid, and I think that's what made that team, I don't know, attractive to some folks. I was just wishing that the team I played with in '86 was a team now because of the wild card, but I don't think we could have made it through the social media ambush. That team. So it's what was great about that team is if you're a fan, you could become a fan of the starting staff. You could be a fan of Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, Dwight Gooden. Or you could become a fan of Lenny Dykstra. There's just a lot of people to root for in that ball club. And I think that's why it was so popular.
I loved Mookie, to be honest. Mookie was my guy.
Mookie
was my guy. So, getting back to this team. So, DeGrom is out there yesterday. I love Jake. I know you do. I don't know how much you can say because you're on the SNY telecast. Yeah. But what he said yesterday I found to be gross. I mean, really gross. I mean, look. The guy's making $17 million this year, Ron. He's going to be 31 years old next year. If he has a great year again this year, he may make 22, 25 next year in arbitration. But to think that at this age, the Mets are going to throw him a 5-year deal, like a Kershaw deal. Kershaw got that deal when he was 26. DeGrom is going to be 31. So I think to a certain extent, I understand why DeGrom wants his money now. I get it. But I think he's being a little tough. I think yesterday was actually kind of gross, and I think the Mets are doing the right thing here. What do you think?
Well, I think if you're looking at it from a pure business standpoint, I think, Sid, you're probably right. I think what the problem is that this is a perfect storm. There's so many things involved here. Let's try to do it quickly. One, your agent who asked for a long-term contract is now the general manager, your general manager of the team.
Right.
That's the first part. Second, you are fighting time. The bad part about being a professional ball player, and it's probably the only bad part, is that you get chased down by the calendar. Doesn't matter who you are, we all end up the same way. And he knows he's 30. He knows he's going to be 31 in June. And he hasn't had a bite of that apple yet, the big apple. A third, I think what happens for a lot of players is that they're looking at free agency now. They're seeing a lot of guys not. This doesn't look like free agency 10 years ago when it seemed everyone got whatever they wanted. This is certainly a different time, a different negotiating period against these MBA guys, MBA, not NBA, MBA guys, business guys that are sitting in the front offices. So I think it's just a perfect storm of here you are at the best you could ever be in your career, and you're looking to have your payday. It might not come. It might not come because if you're a team like the Mets, you'll be negotiating with Jacob DeGrom after one of the finest years in the history of the game.
Right.
That's not a great place to negotiate if you're a ball club, and I'm sure Brody and his people with the Mets know that. Sitting on the other side of the aisle, I'm sure it makes for strange bedfellows. So it's a very strange dynamic. I know what you're saying about it. It sounds gross with maybe limiting innings.
Yeah.
You and I are. I'm much older, but we grew up where it's team first, and then you figure out all the other stuff second. I think those things have changed a little bit, but it is the perfect storm of this could turn into something that they, I'm sure, would not like it to turn into.
His comment yesterday was where I went south on Matt Harvey a couple years ago. Quite frankly, it was the same record all over again. Hey, tell me this. If Cespedes doesn't get back until July or August, the only place on this Met team that I'm really worried about is the power or maybe lack of in the outfield. I know Conforto is a guy that can do it. Is that the one spot, Ron, that Met fans should be somewhat worried?
Well, I would be worried. I mean, when you signed him 2 seasons ago for about $30 million a year, you were expecting 30 and 100 from the position. You don't know if you're going to get that from someone else who's going to be out there. So, if you had a healthy Cespedes, your chances in the NL East go up exponentially. That being said, I still think they've got enough pitching. I think they've added enough depth. And I think they have enough outfielders to hold the line until he comes back. And I do think that they can play some meaningful games in September. That's really what every team is trying to do.
No, I agree with you. And look, their bullpen with Familia coming back to pitch the 8th, Ronnie, and Edwin Diaz in the 9th. Let's wrap it up with this. The Phillies look really good. They've made some great acquisitions, and they still may get Bryce Harper by the time we start the new season. The Braves won it last year. They've also gotten better. The Nats added Patrick Corbin to Scherzer and Strasburg in a short series. That's very, very tough. What do you think are realistic expectations? Like you said, meaningful gains in September, or should Met fans really think this is a playoff team for sure?
Well, I think, in this day and age, everyone wants their team to do what the Red Sox did and win 108 games. I think that's not what you're going to see in the NL East. I think you have a lot of talent. I think you are going to see teams beating up on each other. I would be very surprised that one of them runs away with the 19 games they played against each other. It'll probably be like 500 balls. So, you might end up with a team from the NL East, a very powerful and strong team, winning that division with 87 or 88 wins because there's so much talent in the division.
The book is titled 108 Stitches, Loose Threads, Ripping Yarns, and the Darndest Characters from My Time in the Game. It comes out in April. And, of course, you can see Ron on a bunch of spring training games, and he's great between SNY, the MLB Network, and Turner. Always great to catch up, Ron Darling. Thank you so much.
Sid, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You got it, pal. Ron Darling. We'll take a short break on Sports Sunday.
This is Sid Sports Sunday, driven by Ramsey Mazda every Sunday, 77 WABC. This is Curtis Sliwa's Super Sports Spectacular. On Sid Sports Sunday, powered by Ramsey Mazda.
Pitches and catches, baseball fans, bring thoughts of a World Series championship. But not for my beloved Yankees.
It is good!
They still got the rent-a-wreck Ellsbury. Not only is Ellsbury going to be out for spring training with another problem, remember, he missed all of last season due to hip and foot injuries and wound up undergoing surgery to repair a torn labrum in his hip. Plus, he missed games in previous years. He's been a real lemon. Meantime, hey, Met fans, you don't escape with your red to red. Beat the Mets. It's Cesspool, a.k.a. Cespatides. He escaped behind the sugarcane curtain of Fidel Castro, and now it's my quad, my thigh, bone spurs in both my heels, and now I've had double surgery, but I'll still play golf. But I don't know if I'll ever play baseball again. So hope reigns eternal for spring training, but not for Ellsbury and Cespatides.
Thank you, Curtis. God, I love Curtis. Every day, noon to 3, alongside, well, I should say, with Juliet Huddy. Curtis, the man, of course. And congratulations to Curtis Sliwa. Just a couple of days ago, last Wednesday, he celebrated the 40-year anniversary of the Guardian Angels. He's a guy that has devoted his life to helping keep New Yorkers safe. I mean, really. You say what you want about Curtis. Maybe he annoys you. He's not pro-Trump enough for you. Whatever it is, this guy has dedicated his life. And I did that train ride with him once. You can see on my Twitter account, @Sid Rosenberg, me with the red beret, the red jacket, the whole deal. Went to the worst spots in Brooklyn one night. Went to the whole tour with Curtis. He gets to the train, white, African-American, it doesn't matter. He is a hero. It was amazing to watch. So congratulations to Curtis. That was a great piece. Great show today. I want to thank all of our guests. Brian Kilmeade. Of course, Brian is on after Bernie and I every single day, starting at 10 a.m. He starts at 9 on Fox Radio after his terrific Fox and Friends TV show on Fox News, 6 to 9 every morning. I want to thank former head coach, now Fox and Pac-10 analyst Steve Lavin, and the former great New York Met, Ron Darling. Danny B, as always, terrific job. And I really want to thank Bruce Clayton. Really a bang-up job on the board, and the best executive producer in the sports business today. You know him as Guns, my man, Mike Gunzelman. Quick reminder, Bernie and I are off on Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday morning at 6, the Bernie and Sid Show. Enjoy your holiday tomorrow. From all of us here on Sid Sports and the Bernie and Sid Show, till 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. Peace!
NJDiet.com studios, 77 WABC, New York, a Cumulus station. News now.